Good evening, everyone. Let me start with a story about a man who couldn't move. His name was Edward. He was in his mid-30s, a father of two, and by all accounts, healthy and thriving. One night, Edward woke up suddenly, his eyes snapping open in the dark. He tried to sit up, but he couldn't. It felt as if an invisible force was pressing down on his chest, pinning him to the bed. His arms, his legs, his neck, they wouldn't move. He could hear his wife breathing next to him, and he tried to call her name, but his lips wouldn't respond. Then he saw it, a shadow in the corner of the room. At first it was just a vague shape, but it grew sharper and more menacing. It felt like the shadow was watching him, feeding on his terror. He couldn't scream, couldn't fight, couldn't even breathe properly. All he could do was lie there, completely helpless. When the weight finally lifted, Edward shot up, gasping for air. But the terror lingered. He didn't know it then, but he had just experienced sleep paralysis, a terrifying intersection of the mind and body, where the brain wakes up before the body does. But for Edward, it wasn't just a one-time thing. It began happening more often, each episode feeling heavier and more suffocating than the last. The weight that crushes you. Edward's story is extreme, but many of us have felt something similar. Maybe not as a literal shadow in the corner, but as a crushing, invisible force that makes even the simplest actions feel impossible. Let's talk about this weight. You see, this isn't just a feeling. It's a phenomenon deeply rooted in the brain. And the more you understand it, the scarier it becomes. The brain is a prison. You might think of your brain as your ally, the thing that helps you solve problems, feel joy, and make sense of the world. But what if I told you that your brain can just as easily become your prison? Story, trapped in your own mind. There's a rare condition called locked-in syndrome. Imagine this. You're fully awake, your brain functioning perfectly, but you can't move a single muscle, not even to blink. You're completely trapped inside your own body, screaming internally while the world moves on around you. This happened to Jean-Dominique Bauby, a French journalist. After a massive stroke, he woke up completely paralyzed, able to communicate only by blinking his left eye. For months, he was trapped, unable to move, unable to escape the crushing isolation of his own mind. While locked-in syndrome is rare, it's a grim reminder of how the brain can betray you, turning your own body into a prison. The weight of overload. Now, let's talk about something more relatable: mental overload. You've probably felt it, the sensation of having too much on your plate, too many thoughts in your head, too many emotions swirling around all at once. But what you might not realize is how your brain reacts to this overload. Eerie fact: the frozen brain. When the brain is overwhelmed, it activates a survival mechanism. Instead of fighting or fleeing, it can shut down entirely. This is why some people freeze in the face of danger or stress. It's not a choice, it's your brain pulling the emergency brake. Have you ever stood in front of a sink full of dishes, knowing you need to clean them but feeling like you just can't move? Or stared at an important email for hours, unable to type a single word? That's your brain's way of saying, I can't handle this. I'm shutting down. Now imagine that feeling magnified, paralysis not just in small tasks but in every aspect of life. The heaviness of depression. Let's go deeper. For many people, this weight isn't just a momentary feeling, it's a constant state of being. Story: the woman who couldn't get up. I once met a woman named Clara. She was in her late 40s and had been battling depression for years. One morning, Clara woke up and felt like she couldn't move. It wasn't sleep paralysis. Her body worked just fine. But the mental weight was so heavy that even lifting her hand felt like trying to push a boulder uphill. She described it to me like this: it's not just sadness. It's like being buried alive. You know you need to get up, to eat, to live, but the weight keeps you pinned down. It's suffocating, and you start to wonder if you'll ever escape. What Clara didn't realize is that her brain was actively working against her. Depression rewires the brain, shrinking areas like the hippocampus and disrupting the balance of chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. This isn't just an emotional struggle, it's a physical battle happening inside the brain. The brain's cruel tricks. The scariest part about this mental weight? It often feels completely out of your control. Here are a few of the brain's cruelest tricks. 1. Intrusive thoughts. You're walking across a bridge and out of nowhere your brain whispers, what if you jumped? Or you're holding a baby and the thought flashes, what if I dropped them? These are called intrusive thoughts, and they're one of the brain's most unsettling phenomena. They don't mean anything, your brain isn't telling you to act on them, but they feel horrifyingly real in the moment. 2. Cognitive distortions. Your brain also loves to distort reality. It convinces you that you're a failure, that no one cares about you, that things will never get better. These thoughts feel like truth, but they're just tricks your brain plays when it's under stress or overwhelmed. the shadow of sleep paralysis. Let's return to sleep paralysis for a moment. For centuries, people have described waking up with a crushing weight on their chest, unable to move. In medieval times, they believed it was caused by a demon sitting on their chest, stealing their breath. In modern science, we know it's your brain playing tricks on you during the transition between sleep and wakefulness. But knowing the science doesn't make it any less terrifying. Imagine waking up in the dead of night, your body frozen, and seeing shadowy figures hovering around you. Your brain, in its confused state, creates hallucinations that feel as real as the bed beneath you. Subscribe, comment, and share. Some people experience this so often that they fear going to sleep, trapped in a cycle of exhaustion and terror.